Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our Frontlines breakout session. Hopefully you are all as excited as I am about some of the new developments that Mathilde, Maya, and Nageesh talked about. I'm Theresa from the product marketing team, and I will be your moderator today. And I'm truly excited to be joined by two leaders and innovators in the customer service realm, Ahmed Khattak, CEO and founder of US Mobile, and our own Kenji Hayward, head of customer support at Front. And so our topic today for our chat is, how do I build a support team that consistently delivers 95% CSAT? And so hopefully the goal here is that you walk away from today's session with some learnings and best practices on how to run best-in-class service teams in Front. Ahmed and Kenji, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to get into this chat. So before I dive in, a few housekeeping items. This is a live session and we want to engage with everyone and take as many questions as we can. So please post your questions directly into the Q&A chat. My colleague Andrea will be managing the chat and will help bubble up as many as she can for us to address live at the end. And then a final note, I'd highly encourage and welcome you all to check out the Frontlines community forum. So head over to community.front.com and please post any questions that we can't get to there. And we'll be actively monitoring and engaging as a team to help answer any questions. So without further ado, let's start off with an intro. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your company, and your support team? Ahmed, let's have you kick us off.
Theresa, thank you for having me. So glad to be here. My name is Ahmed Khattak. I'm the CEO and founder of US Mobile. US Mobile is a wireless network operator that provides connectivity to small businesses, medium enterprises, and end users across America. We are built on top of two of the best networks in the country. And then we have a global product that gives you instant internet connectivity on your phone in over 150 countries in the world within seconds for less than $10. US Mobile is a distributed company. We have close to 450 people today, spread across a couple of continents, and US Mobile offers 24/7 customer support. Our SLAs are that we have to respond to you on our phone calls in less than a minute, any time of the day, and chats under 30 seconds. And we have around 350 people on our support team.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for being with us here today. And Kenji, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks again, Theresa. And so glad to be doing this with someone like Ahmed. Really impressive stats. So I work at Front. I am the head of support here, and I've really just built my entire career in customer service. I've been leading support teams for over 10 years now, and I've spent about 6 of those years here at Front. So our team is a team of 25. We're spanned globally across the world, and we handle about 5,000 to 6,000 inquiries per month. And if you're curious about our resolution times, we just launched our new transparent metrics report that's available on front.com. So you can see how we're doing in real time. The thing I'm most proud of with our team is, not only the metrics and how we've been able to scale, but we've pretty much not grown much headcount wise over the last 2 years, but our CSATs continue to go up. We're currently averaging about 98 to 99% CSAT, and we do that with a relatively small team considering the volume that we get. And one thing that's not really a metric, but I do want to highlight is we have had 0 regretted attrition on the support team in over 6 years, which is pretty rare in support. I've worked long enough in the industry that I think it's worth celebrating, and just some of the best people that you'll ever meet.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenji. Sounds like you have quite a special team over there. And so those are some pretty impressive team metrics that you were able to share with us, which actually leads us very nicely into our next question. So Kenji, what would you say are the primary drivers of your team's success?
Yeah, I would say using Front, and I'm not just saying that because I work here or for the amazing features that we have talked about during Frontlines. It's really been a driver to our success because we're in a unique position that we use Front to support our customers. So not a lot of support teams can say they use their own product for support. So that is a couple of things. One, we have this deeply built-in knowledge and subject matter expertise. But maybe more importantly, we have empathy built in because we're a Front customer. So we're really excited about features when they get launched. We feel the pain when there are pain points. So I think that's extra motivation that drives us to help you get the best response possible because we're customers ourselves. A couple of things that are drivers for success are the collaboration features within Front. We started as a pretty small team. When I started 6 years ago, we were 3. We're 25 today, which isn't the largest team, but we've been able to maintain that through collaborating. So not really approaching it from a one-to-one, but how can our team, as a group, get you the quickest answer possible? And so Front allows you to do that. And 9 out of 10 of the times that'll happen within support, and that 10% will reach out across the org, maybe to Theresa, maybe to another person within Front to help get the answer for the customer. So, and the last thing I'll mention, I'm glad that Ahmed's here. I think that it's not talked about enough that if you have leadership that truly values great customer support, that really helps to drive success. We've got a similar founder in Mathilde. So I think that when you see folks walk the walk and you see, Ahmed start talking about some of his stats, I think that's just motivating for someone like me in a support role.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Fantastic points. And we often hear that customer support and service teams are actually team sports. And so really what you touched on now around the collaboration piece, that cross-functional, really working together as one team really shows that. So Ahmed, what about the success drivers of your team?
I don't think I'll repeat a lot of stuff that Kenji said, but I think Kenji really hit the nail on most of the things why, because of what it makes a really great customer support team. So I'm just gonna hone in on 3 things, which is any organization's customer support is as good as what its leadership thinks about what support should look like, how people are treated internally at the organization, and empathy, autonomy, and in our case, my personal opinion is that your product support can be as, for it to be the most delightful experience, you have to give people who are providing the support an extremely delightful experience. And that's been a very big driver for us in using Front. It's a very delightful tool. It's a tool that brings a lot of transparency. Shared inboxes. Anyone can go in and look at a conversation. You can tag anyone in it. And I think that is what the bigger companies miss out on, which is you can go and you can try to train people in what empathy is and what being nice is. But if you're giving them a really crappy platform to respond to chats or emails on, that really gets to a lot of people. So I would say one of the most understated qualities of, understated things about being able to provide great product support is how good is your product support tool, and for us that was as important. The product support tool that we use in Front had to be as beautiful as our own support. So it's been, for us, that's been, other than what Kenji said, people underestimate how important tools are to be able to provide those services.
Totally, 100% hear you on that. We often hear that, as you mentioned, service really becomes the brand. And so really, we see a lot of support and service teams become a driver of brand loyalty. And to your point, your service is only as good as your brand. And so making sure that that is front and center and continues to be a priority for teams is really, really important. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper into some of the day-to-day. What about Front has had the biggest impact to your customer service team? Anything from specific workflows, any of the reports that you're tracking, or even how the team views about Front and the journey to using Front? Let's have Ahmed take this one first.
I read back in the day that a lot of new generation enterprise tools were going to be chosen not by the CRO or the CSO of the organization. It'll be actually chosen by the people who work there. Part of the reason why Slack became really big, because people didn't want to use any other tool. I can say the exact same thing about Front. Over the years, we've tried different tools. We are now an organization at scale. We take over 100,000 customer conversations a month, which is pretty significant. We have activated more than 1 million people over the years on our platform, and this is 24/7. for stuff that is needed, connectivity is something needed all the time. And the single biggest driver of adoption of Front at US Mobile has been Front. Like they were the biggest evangelists of Front. Why? Everything from the transparency that the product brings in, in the features that it has, the shared inboxes, collaboration, the fact that Front really pushed us as an organization, or using a tool like Front pushed as an organization, where we went away from putting tickets as on people's names, as opposed to treating people as they are, which is like, okay, a real person without a ticket number on it. We, in a high stress product support environment where we'll get hundreds of chats in an hour, I think the fact that Front in itself is a very delightful tool has been something that's has played a very big, or has made a very big impact on our product support team. And like I said, our product support team are Front's biggest evangelists.
Yeah, amazing. I actually did a little bit of research myself on just the scale that you're talking about, Ahmed. And I see as of this morning, you guys had over 3,500 reviews on Trustpilot with a 4.8 out of 5 rating, 95% recommendation on reviews.io. And so really you can't make these numbers up. And really it's a reflection of the quality that your service and support teams provide. And so truly outstanding numbers when you talk about the scale that you're servicing these customers at. All right, Kenji, back over to you to share your thoughts on Front's impact to your team.
Sure. Yeah. And a huge plus when everything Ahmed mentioned. I think it's really interesting now that I think about it, that we have 2 different size teams using Front in different ways. For me, I think the thing that's had the biggest impact this year has really been leveraging analytics and specifically tagging. So we were noticing we weren't getting enough in-depth insights from our existing tags. So the team completely rebuilt our tagging structure. And it took a lot of time, a ton of work, but it's really been paying off. And now we're able to see all the different pain points, the customers are having. We're able to provide trends to our design and our engineering and our product teams. And, specific to the topic of this conversation of CSAT, I use those insights to help us continue to improve. It's great to be at 98%, but I would like to keep that and keep it going up. I know it can't go up much further, but that's the goal. So if you're a customer support team and you're wondering, where do you even start? How do you use analytics in Front, or what do you use for data, to improve your CSAT? The first thing I would do is measure it to get a baseline, try to understand where you are today. It doesn't matter if you're at 70 or 80, you just have to know where the starting line is. And the second thing is to set a goal. So setting, attainable goals that you can strive to. That's definitely been a part of our success and has made a big impact. And then measuring those, again, like the insights we've gathered from Front analytics has been the thing that has pointed us in the right direction. We keep doing what we do well, but we want to continue to improve because we do have areas that we need to work on.
Amazing. Really great to hear how the team is using Front, not just for performance analytics, but also for like that team coaching aspect that you talked about. Really beyond that, super cool to see a really close feedback loop too. When you talk about that tagging piece, really surfacing the relevant metrics, the customer feedback between not just only your team, but engineering, product, marketing, all of that stuff is super, super useful for teams all around. Okay. Let's pivot a bit. So zooming out from some of the tactical day-to-day pieces to longer-term strategy and investments. Our next question here is, where are you investing next to continue improving your service? And then just a theme of just our keynote today, the big elephant in the room, AI. Does that have a role as well? Kenji, we'll have you dive into this one first.
Yeah, so the answer to both of these questions is AI. So AI is definitely going to play a big role, and we're already investing in that. If you watch the keynote, you saw some of the capabilities. We'll definitely be implementing those. We already are today. But the way I'm approaching it is really thinking about not what AI can replace, but what it can't, because I think we know what's going to be replaced. It'll be simple answers. It'll be transactional responses. It'll be, repetitive tasks. Things like tagging, hopefully eventually will be automated. I know we're working on that. But the things that you can't replace are kind of like what Ahmed touched on is the people, like your team here. I'm really investing in the team and how are we going to evolve to stay ahead of the curve, because AI is just moving at such a rapid clip that that's where my investment is. And one example of that is in the last 2 months, we just launched a brand new team within the support team called Support Operations. And they're focused on creating brand new content that's going to create better answers for AI generated responses. They are creating new workflows and helping us become more efficient. And then we actually created a brand new role called the Support Operations Analyst, who's focused on that data I talked about, like really focusing on analyzing the trends and where we're going to go to continue to be efficient. So the great side effect of this is it was really scary at first, thinking about, will AI replace roles on the support team? But I really think it's just going to augment and evolve. So now we have these new career paths here at Front that my team can, continue to grow into. So it's actually been a really exciting time for us.
That's super cool to hear. I love how you touched on that human element aspect of it. And then in one of Ahmed's earlier answers, he also touched on the tooling part of it. So it's really a combination of both, really listening to the team, understanding like what they're looking for, how you can help advance them as well, to really help build a successful support team. And so really also love the point about what AI can't replace rather than what it can. I think there's a lot of chatter and noise just about the fear of AI and it completely replacing the human element of it. And so, yeah, just super interesting to hear about how your team is taking this really proactive angle to imagine support as well as support operations. And that's an area of focus for you. Ahmed, what service investments are top of mind for you?
Great question. I'm going to give a bit of an indirect answer on this. Over the last 2.5, 3 years, US Mobile has gone from 18 to $70 million in run rate. Having said that, and obviously, we have launched products that, we have a product that interconnects with like more than 300 different wireless carriers in the world. There aren't that many countries in the world, but obviously every country has multiple carriers. The reason I mentioned this is that as we have grown that much, we have had our engineers work less than what they were working a year before that, even though our releases have been a lot more and our engineering team hasn't grown exponentially. The engineering team was able to do that because a lot of them brought in stuff like GPT-4, which was, okay, well, it saves me 4 hours because I don't have to, do X, Y, Z on my code, and GPT helps me kind of compile that. I see AI doing the exact same thing for support agents and stuff, which is it's not going to take their jobs over. It's going to help them spend less time doing, less time answering questions or doing stuff that they're not supposed to do, and more time on stuff that is a lot more meaningful in the context of product support, which is empathy and vice versa. Customer comes in and says my data is not working, or my texting is not working, whatever that happens. Really, it should be AI that should be able to answer that question, and the product support person should be super focused on that one-on-one human element. And so that's kind of my view on, if you do AI properly, what it can do. It can create much better employee experience. It can save meaningful amount of time so they can focus on other stuff. And I think that's what really excites me. And I think that's what AI should play a role in. And whether it'll do that or not is another story. But there's massive amounts of potential. If engineers can do it, I think the product support people can do it too.
Yeah, fantastic point about basically using technology to enable and also complement your teams, so that, to your point, right, like we would see a lot of these manual, very repetitive asks that come in, where maybe like a chatbot can come and help answer the question, if not answer it 80% before handing it off to the person, and then bringing that human personalized element back to it. So fantastic point there. And so I noticed that both you and Kenji have a lot of just common themes that you've talked about when you're talking about just overall investments and what you're thinking about for the team. It's really focused on one, like what the tool is able to bring, really understanding its functionality and how it plugs into the team. But then on the other side of the equation, really focusing on like the employee experience, the human element, and just making sure that it's not replacing, but again, enhancing. So fantastic points from the both of you. All right, so moving on to our final topic of this session. Do you have any advice for other service and support leaders? Bonus if it's specific to front. Ahmed, we'll have you go first.
Choose the right tool, choose the right partner. Part of the reason why we moved away from our last provider to this current provider was that it really matters. Like if you want to give the best product experience out there, are you working with a company that actually shares the same ethos? With us, with our last company, that wasn't the case. So, downtimes, in times when they're not supposed to be, and vice versa, they didn't care about that, about their customer. Like, a really good point that I think Kenji made was, we are our own customers. So you know what? There isn't a better way to kind of keep yourself on your, on your toes. Because, well, I mean, if front is down, then front's customer is not hearing about it as well. And for best product support, empathy. Like at the end of the day, the thing that I keep on talking about is put yourself in the other person's shoes. Like, for us, I think our greatest victories at US Mobile come when we make our biggest detractors into our biggest supporters, and it's much, much easier to do than what people think.
Cool. Really loved on how you touched on that partnership piece of it, because I know, as you mentioned, like US Mobile is right now at a time where you guys are growing super rapidly. Scale is really important. And so really understanding and being able to future-proof that scale is really important to your growth as well. All right, Kenji, I will hand this over to you to share your advice and then close out the question.
Sure. Things are changing so rapidly right now. Like the things we are talking about today will be completely different by the next time we do Frontlines. So it can be overwhelming. I get overwhelmed at times with all the different AI options and things out there. So my advice is just to take a step back and really think holistically about how all of this is going to work together. How are your teams? How are your tools? How are your processes all going to kind of work together to really create the best customer experience? And I think that's what customer operations is all about. So just take a breath, take the bigger picture into scope, and then start experimenting and see what works.
Totally. One day at a time, but also don't be afraid to try things. So well said, Kenji. Thank you for imparting your wisdom with us today. And hopefully the audience is also able to take away and walk away with some tangible best practices and insights from what you both shared today. So just doing a quick time check here. Looks like we are a couple minutes ahead of schedule. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, really wanted to have this be an interactive session with the audience. And so we will now open it up for Q&A, and we'll have about 15 minutes for that. So friendly reminder, if you guys can go ahead and drop in any Q&A that you have for both Kenji and Ahmed, and then Andrea will help bubble and surface them, and we can get going on that. Okay, it looks like we have some questions rolling in. A question from John. Will you make it transparent to the customer whether a response is being made by a person versus AI? I will open up the floor to both of you. If you guys are super passionate about a question in general, go for it. So Ahmed, let's have you go first.
Yeah, I think the way I think way front is set up right now is it actually does make it obvious to you, which is like, okay, whether it's a real person or it's a bot. In the short term, I think the answer is yes. It is, you should make it obvious to people, just because I think there is a bit of stigma around AI at this point. In the long run, really what matters is who is best placed to answer a customer's query to exactly what they want. And AI done properly, where they're not under the stress of whether they've had lunch or breakfast or whether there's something going on with them and vice versa, and being objective on answering. I'm not sure whether it be super important. I'm not really taking a position at this point, and I'm really talking about a couple of years in the future. I do think AI has the potential to improve so much that it might not be needed.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Ahmed said. I think it depends on the context. So for example, like if it's a chatbot, totally, like even without the AI, you should let the customer know that you're chatting with a chatbot. And for most part, I think it's pretty standard best practice. If it's an email and you're using AI suggested answers, really depends. Kind of depends on how comfortable you are with sending those responses. But the way that I'm doing it today is we leverage the agent to make that call. We're not just using the AI generated answer, we're also adding in our own comments and making sure it's a draft that we're proud of. One thing that you can do if you're not sure is you can actually measure these separately. So when it comes to CSAT, one thing I'm thinking about doing is measuring how CSAT generated responses, AI generated responses, how their CSAT is measuring against purely human responses. And as that number gets closer and closer, that's probably when I'll be a little more comfortable kind of taking the leash off and letting that go fully on. But right now, I think, like Ahmed said, it's such an experimentation phase. Nobody really knows yet. So kind of, use your best judgment on which channels you think are appropriate.
Great. Okay, maybe Kenji, we can have you start this one. What are some of the most helpful tags used to organize conversations or tickets? Yeah,
I think just depends on your product, but I think areas of your product is the place to start. If you ask your support team, I guarantee you can whiteboard your top 10 or top 20 most common requests. So that's where I would start, is just different areas of the product will probably be your most common tags. In relation to AI sentiments, you can start thinking about tagging sentiment, happy, angry, upset, all the different emotions that you care about. And when it comes to incident management, I think that's a good use of tags too, where you want to specifically track how a certain feature or how a certain incident may have impacted the customer experience. You can really get really granular and create specific tags. But I would start by asking your team and really thinking about what are those top 10 or 20.
Cool. And that really reinforces that point that you had around just like the data collection and being able to understand all these different points. It really starts with, we have all of this information right now. I don't think there's no shortage of data in general. And so where the value really comes in is being able to parse through it and really understand and make it actionable to either share with teams or, to build plans upon. So great answer. Ahmed, is there anything that you want to add on to that?
No, I think Kenji answered that question pretty appropriately.
Great. Okay, Ahmed, a question for you. Thanks for the session. Ahmed mentioned how it is so rewarding turning your biggest detractors into your biggest supporters. Was keen to get an understanding if there was any one or two things on how you guys accomplished that.
Absolutely. First point, pretty much every person in the world that you ever meet is looking for that incremental amount of kindness. So it's kind of knowing that we find it pretty easy, which is when someone comes in and they're not happy about the product or you, the very first thing we do is we tell them, listen, sorry for what's happened with you. I'm not sure what I can try to read into the comments on what the context of this is, but I promise you, I won't leave you till I solve your problem. And if the solution to the problem is that you're not going to be a US mobile customer anymore, that is fine as well. I'll help you land at a place that you're happy about, but I'm here. And no matter how upset you are, I won't leave till we get somewhere. This one sentence, a long sentence, albeit, has been an absolute game changer for us as a company. It immediately, because all that someone ever is looking for is, a lot of time people know that their problem is not solvable. They're just looking for someone who cares about them enough to help them get to a better place.
Also, great point about how you talked about customer empathy and just really understanding and at least voicing that you've heard the customer. I think that is usually a very first good step in terms of diffusing the situation. I know sometimes emotions can run high. So really just understanding and validating their concerns. And then from there, you can take it and problem solve together. But fantastic answer in terms of turning some of your biggest detractors into your champions. And again, just based on the reviews that US Mobile has, like there is no shortage of data to support that point. Okay. We have a question for either of you. As thought leaders, what trends in the world of customer service are you most and least excited about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I have the same answer for both. I'm both the most excited about the potential of AI, but I'm also the least excited because it's the least I know about it. There's a lot of uncertainty in there, but I'm genuinely excited because of some of the changes I'm seeing today, like the new team that we're building, but I'm less excited because there's just so much we need to learn. So I would say AI for both.
I'm going to give a more traditional kind of answer on this, which is a real world answer in terms of the thing that I'm the least excited about is that I think post-COVID, the world has incrementally become a bit ruder. So we could definitely be, we can definitely make an effort to be a bit nicer to each other. That's what I'm the most excited about as well, because there's a huge opportunity to build next gen organizations that are just a lot more empathetic. You can see that in fintech, you can see that in telecom, you can see that in consumers. And I think what this is going to result in is that a lot of companies will create multi-billion-dollar market caps for just having an exponentially better product support. Like Front is a good example of that. So in the long run, I think that's what really excites me.
Yeah, and Ahmed, that actually reminded me of in a previous conversation that we had, you mentioned that customer service is only as good as the CEO service. And so as you're talking through some of these answers, like that really just shows up consistently of this kindness that you're talking about, and really making sure that it may not be like a very tangible differentiator, but in a world where we have so many different consumer options, that is one that is bound to stand out and withstand the test of time. Okay, just again, we are deep in the middle of Q&A. We are receiving so many great questions. If you didn't get yours answered, make sure to please check out our Frontlines forum where we will follow up directly with you. Okay, next question, and it looks like this one is for Kenji. Which front features do you and your teams leverage the most to provide exceptional customer support? Can you give an example or a use case? And then Ahmed will flip it over to you for your team.
Yeah, I mean, I would say kind of like I talked about, the collaboration is probably the feature that we use the most, whether that's commenting, for the next agent. And a specific example is we've got folks in Australia, folks in Europe, folks in the US, and depending on the time of the day, you might have handoffs happening, right? And to me, the most important thing is getting the customer the best response. It doesn't have to be from the same person. So I think we really leverage comments as a workflow to make sure that we're able to get customers' answers the quickest. But that doesn't always scale. That's how we were initially built, when we were a smaller team. So we also do layer on top of that some auto assignments. So we leverage Front auto assignment rules and load balancing. So that helps us keep things moving where we can still approach the general queue and answer questions more quickly, but also gives us the structure where we're getting a set amount of workload. So that balance of the two has really helped us to scale with the service we have today.
Cool. And then I think the audience is also super interested in any specific workflows that you can highlight. So maybe at a super high level, walk us through the life cycle of a support request.
Yeah, here's one for CSAT. So if you're using Front CSAT, or maybe you're not, but one workflow that I use are notifications for our managers. So say, for example, we get that really rare case where a customer is unhappy and they leave a not great response or rating. We've built a rule that will notify our managers and the agents that we received that, and we approach that as an opportunity to kind of like Ahmed touched on, like to really turn that around and to provide even more empathy. So that's a specific workflow you can use. Build a rule that will notify when you get a CSAT score of X, whatever you consider your threshold, and then you can really continue to improve in real time.
Great. Ahmed would also love to open this up to you. Again, the question is, which front features do you and your teams leverage the most to provide exceptional customer support? And then would also love to step into your shoes and understand a workflow that you're particularly excited about.
So my answer actually is pretty much identical to Kenji, and I don't have specific workflows myself. So I think I'll definitely rest my case, based on like what Kenji made.
Awesome. Great minds think alike. Cool to see that you guys are leveraging the same CSAT workflows. Okay, and then this is kind of a follow-up question. For Kenji, any advice or front features that you see are most useful for small support teams, i.e. less than 20 members, and then would also like to go to the other side to Ahmed's much larger support team and have him share some of those best practices too.
Yeah, I think, like I touched on, I'll say tagging again is really important, especially for smaller teams. You may not think it. You may think that you're too small to start thinking about how you're scaling, but that's really how you're going to keep your team efficient. And then the collaboration, like we talked about, those are probably the two I would say that are really helpful as a small team. And then utilize discussions. You've got channels like Slack, for more casual chats. But we're a small team. We're small enough where we can open up a specific discussion thread within Front, and we can talk about whether it's a specific incident or even how our day is going. I think when you're a smaller team, it's more important to stay even more connected because you still have that chance and that opportunity, to connect with folks, everybody by their first name, which is actually my favorite part of working in this kind of sweet spot of a smaller team.
Ahmed, over to you for larger teams. Any best practices?
So obviously collaboration is like the mainstay of Front, and Front has been pretty great at it. It's been a core product there. So similar thoughts to Kenji. On the flip side of it, for a team that's more than 300 people, load balancing is like by far one of the best things that we can use and we use, which is we want to make sure that a specific agent is not talking to more than a couple of people at a time, because then the product experience becomes bad and the wait times and stuff like that. So and there's science to load balancing, which is like, okay, what happens when you have more than 3 people talking? Can you give a really delightful message to someone on chat? Like maybe you can let them play a game or something like that, like eventually. So I think there's stuff that I think about from the load balancing perspective that I think is the next step, and maybe potentially some of that Front can do. But load balancing, I would say, is a delightful load balancing tool is something that you absolutely need and leverage when your organization becomes much bigger.
Yeah, definitely going back to that people piece, you want to make sure that you are utilizing them to their maximum potential without burning them out, because that's also another theme that we see within the service and support space, is that these queues just become massive. And it's like, when does it ever end? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? So definitely to your point about load balancing, that's really important just to help protect the sanity of your own team, and then also make it feel like the workload is manageable. So great points there for both a very small team and then also a very large team. Okay, next question for either of you. What do you think about the concept of ticketing? Do you think about that all in terms of how you use Front? I know traditionally, if you're looking at a help desk platform, those live in those ticketing structures that people are used to, but Front works and operates on a much different model. So either of you want to take that one?
I can start. And by the way, I might be wrong as well. So if anyone uses ticketing in the audience, please, no offense, but I think it's antiquated. It's an old way of doing things. So absolutely not if you don't think about it. And so now if you're thinking, okay, well, if there's no ticketing, how are you tracking chain of events and vice versa? A Front does a pretty good job in attaching conversations, but more importantly, that's why workflows exist. And you can apply them to get to a decent position, but we don't think about them at all.
Yeah, I mean, similar in that I don't think about it. It's not really ever top of mind. But also, like, Front does have the if you want to do ticketing, you can. So I think the way that Ahmed and I approach support, it's an intentional choice that we choose not to go, with providing the ticket number right away. But you can if you want to. We have something called conversation IDs in Front, and you can use the contact form and you can kind of mimic what you're used to. But the beauty of using Front is the collaboration and not having to kind of go down that older route. But you can if you want to.
Great. And then just a reminder, we have about 5 minutes left for this session. So get in your questions for both Kenji and Ahmed. The next question that we have here is for either of you. what are some blockers you have faced in the last year in terms of improving service further?
I can go first. I think, like Ahmed touched on earlier, I think the post-COVID, the economy has really impacted all teams. Our team, it's really made me think about scaling the team differently. Like, we don't have. If you asked me 2 years ago, I probably would have hired more people and thought about that. Would have been my first inclination. But now I'm thinking more of how can we be more efficient? Like, how can we use our tools to the max, and how can we find new workflows? So I think that the economy has definitely made an impact on our industry. And so tools like the ones that we're using are just even more important, because we don't have the luxury of hiring as much, even if we wanted to.
Yes, that is our company's mantra of smart frugal, and just making sure that you guys are dedicating the resources appropriately and really justifying and understanding what those needs are. Ahmed, anything you want to weigh in on?
And this is industry specifics. I'm not sure if it applies to a lot of people. We have a very complex product where if you're a US mobile customer, you get out of Grand Central Station, you can jump between the 4G network and the 5G network, 5G ultra wideband, 5G low band. Different models behave differently, and vice versa. So as we are growing and people are bringing all kinds of different phones, and and technology is changing, that's creating all kinds of issues in terms of like really figuring out why your data is not slow or fast. Is it because of the network? Is it because of some settings on our end? Is it because of some settings on your end? So for us, that's the biggest blocker in terms of like, how do we figure out exactly what's going on with you? We can use technology. I think the front has a potential for us to integrate some stuff where like we can actually see some network diagnostics while we're chatting to you based on your phone number, and actually present that to an agent. So there's stuff that we're thinking on a high level that can actually get us to a place where we have more insight, but it's definitely turning into a blocker as well at the same time in terms of improving our service further.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things to figure out as you try to improve already great service. And so it's really cool to kind of see you looking 2 steps ahead of how can we continue the spirit of continuous improvement, and just making sure that you continue to maintain that level of service. Cool. I think we have time for maybe one last question here. So for either of you, want to open the floor up, what are your most important metrics that you're tracking on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or maybe even a daily basis?
I can go. Response time. So response time by inbox. They have different SLAs. So, chat, email, all the different channels. Response time is front and center. Also CSAT, quality is equally important. And now we're starting to look into resolution time now that we have that metric available to us, or at least in beta for customers today. So I'd say those are the main ones I'm looking at. And I'm looking at that weekly. The other thing that I do, which is kind of a fun way to look at metrics, is a leaderboard. So every week I share with my team exactly how we're tracking towards our monthly goals, which are pretty similar to the weekly. But I also share who's interacted with the most customers and what's a great, CSAT response that we got. So I try to look at it those 2 ways, but those are the main ones: response time, resolution time, and CSAT.
CSAT and NPS for us is like really the only North Stars we have. Part of it is because we encourage our agents to talk to someone for an hour if they really want to, and so then if those are North Stars, how do we make sure that we're not missing thousands of conversations? The way to do that is to create enough sophistication where if someone wants to leave a review for us, it should be very easy. It should not be hard. So make it very easy for people to leave a review for you, whether that's a post conversation email, whether that's an in-app notification, whether that's after chat, and make that really robust so that very few reviews are missed. And as long as those metrics look good, for us, nothing else really matters as much.
Great. Fantastic answers from the both of you. Hopefully the audience here found Q&A super insightful, being able to jump into the minds of 2 leaders in the space. It looks like we are wrapping up on time. So that is all the questions that we have for today. Again, friendly reminder, please be sure to head over to our community to keep the conversation going. And again, I want to thank you to Kenji and Ahmed again for also joining us in the session today and just sharing all of the great wisdom around CSAT and support teams and just delivering that world-class service and doing it in a very empathetic, kind way. We hope you all enjoyed your time today in this session, as well as the Frontlines keynote, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks all.